All right, welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're treating spiritual development a bit differently. Not as some lofty, abstract philosophy, but as a strict, elite operational briefing. If you've been doing the reading, maybe deconstructing your past, and you're sitting there wondering what to actually do with all this information, well, you're in the exact right place. We're pulling directly from Doing the Work, a practitioner's manual, which is a highly tactical guide for what's known as post-institutional Gnostic perennialism. Now, don't worry about the big words because this isn't about joining a new club. It is an uncompromising masterclass for serious, independent researchers who want to permanently shift their baseline of reality. So let's explore this framework together.
We've got exactly 6 tactical objectives on the agenda today. The active practice spiral, clearing the ground, the pillars of serious practice, navigating the dark night, vetting real community, and transmitting the knowledge. Let's get right into it. Phase 1. The active practice spiral, or moving beyond the reading club.
Okay, so here is the massive paradigm shift we're dealing with. Think about it. You can read 10 books on swimming and absolutely still drown. The spiritual traditions that actually produced awakened people, like the Desert Fathers or Zen Masters, they were never just reading clubs. Post-institutional Gnostic perennialism basically operates on this active spiral where nothing is taken on faith. You're going to cycle back to the same terrain at greater and greater depths over time, but the one absolute, non-negotiable rule is this. You have to rigorously test everything yourself. No exceptions.
I absolutely love this quote from the poet Antonio Machado, "The path is made by walking." Intellectual understanding, that's really just the warm-up. The actual practice is the journey itself. Genuine spiritual traditions were always, at their core, practice communities. Moving on to Phase 2, clearing the ground. Deconstruction without dissolution. So, before you start building a shiny new spiritual framework, you have to assess the foundation you're currently standing on, because it might be structurally compromised. You've got to avoid the trap of dissolution. That's when you tear everything down just to perform this sort of intellectual independence, which really just leads to a nihilistic flatness. It's a dead end. True deconstruction is about interrogating beliefs to find out what is actually true. It's a tool, right? It's not the final destination.
To clear the ground safely, we're going to use a very specific tactical tool, the 3-column belief inventory. Get a physical notebook for this. You're going to map out what I was taught right alongside what I actually believe. And then, this is the most important part, you create a 3rd column, what I don't know. Do not rush to fill that in. Leaving that 3rd column completely empty is your real starting line. That empty space is where genuine inquiry actually begins. Now, once you've done that inventory, you'll probably realize something surprising. Not everything you were taught is false. You aren't just throwing out the ore, you're extracting the gold from the dross. You want to keep your inheritance while dropping the corrupt institutional container. So write down 5 teachings that still ring true at a gut level. Write down the practices that actually changed you and the mystics who just feel like kindred spirits. That right there, that's your gold. Keep it. Phase 3. Pillars of serious practice. The 4 non-negotiable tools. If you want to permanently shift your baseline of reality, you need an exact blueprint. And these 4 pillars, they aren't just nice suggestions. They are the required structural mechanics for serious practitioners. First, we have stillness. That's the absolute foundation. Then, bodywork, because your body is not the enemy of awakening. It is literally the instrument through which it happens. Third is study, specifically slow reading that feeds the intellect in service of awakening rather than feeding the ego. And finally, service, taking your inner work out into the messy, unglamorous real world to give yourself a reality check and prevent spiritual narcissism. 20, look at that number. That represents your daily, non-negotiable 20-minute sit, which is pillar 1. You don't need a fancy app for this. You literally just need a chair, a timer, and 20 minutes of sitting with what is actually happening in your mind without trying to edit it. Try doing this every single day for 30 days before you decide if it works or not. Now, here's the kicker. Quitting when it gets hard is the ultimate beginner's mistake, because hitting that wall of boredom or restlessness or intense emotion, that means you have finally arrived at the real work. Everything you did before hitting that wall was just a warm-up. Your willingness to sit with that friction is the actual mechanism of transformation. Moving to pillar 3, the study pillar, the manual introduces the 3-column research journal. Because standard academic reading just isn't enough when you're trying to study like a mystic. You log your direct quotes on the left, sure, but the center column is absolutely vital. What did the text actually do to you? What was your phenomenological response? Did it disturb you, move you? And then on the right, you build map connections across different traditions. This is how you start to verify independent witnesses to the exact same spiritual territory.
All right, phase 4, navigating the dark night. Basically when the lights go out.
This is absolutely crucial. When your spiritual aliveness just vanishes out of nowhere, you need to run a threat assessment. The manual starkly separates a necessary mystical threshold from a true clinical emergency. St. John of the Cross called this the dark night, and believe it or not, it's actually a sign of progress. It means your system is being reorganized at a much deeper level. In clinical depression, the whole system shuts down, nothing interests you at all. But in the dark night, you might actually function perfectly fine at work, but that interior spiritual fire is just gone.
So when that interior fire does go out, these 4 rules are your non-negotiable survival guide. Number 1, do not stop sitting. Showing up when you get absolutely 0 results, that's the advanced practice. Number 2, do not try to fake or manufacture the spiritual ecstasy. Let it be dark. Lean heavily on pillars 2 and 4, your body work and your practical service. And finally, find a companion who has actually survived this terrain to walk alongside you.
Phase 5, vetting real community. Let's talk about auditing the field. Look, surviving the darkness usually means you need other people, but you have to be ruthless about auditing potential groups against these red flags, or you're just walking into a trap. If the leader's personal life is entirely off limits, massive red flag. If questioning the core framework is suddenly treated as a lack of faith, walk away. And seriously, beware of groups where their specific vocabulary is weaponized to isolate you from outsiders, or where the money and power only flows straight up to the top.
On the flip side, we've got the green flags. These prove that a community actually values sincere inquiry in your ultimate liberation, rather than just building dependency. You want to look for transparency regarding the leadership's limitations. Look for places where disagreement actually aids collective discernment instead of shutting it down. A huge green flag is if people can leave the group without facing any social drama or penalty. And honestly, genuine spiritual communities tend to have real laughter. They're joyful, not super solemn and rigid.
So how do we test this practically? Enter the 1-year community experiment. You run a systematic rotation. You're going to spend 4 months actively participating in 3 different green flag communities. Don't just immediately commit to the first decent group you find. Engage genuinely with each one. And then, at the end of the year, do a really honest assessment. Which one actually changed you? Which one challenged your assumptions in a productive way?
And finally, phase 6, transmitting the knowledge, the integrity standard.
As you start sharing your integrated personal work outward, you absolutely have to stick to a strict integrity standard. Presenting your own personal speculation as some universal law causes massive harm. Whether you're sharing this knowledge through a private chat, a small teaching circle, or one-on-one mentorship, you have to be wildly honest about your own limitations. Your synthesis is valuable precisely because it's yours, but you must clearly distinguish between what you actually know, what you believe, what you're just speculating about, and what you have personally experienced. So, before you go out there and start teaching, you've got to ask yourself this one rigorous question, or else you risk burning down the very ground you just cleared. Have your insights stabilized into embodied wisdom that holds under pressure, or are you transmitting prematurely? A mystic who transmits before the work is fully integrated can cause real, lasting damage. Take your time, do the practice, clear the ground, and when the lights go out, just keep walking, because that is how the path becomes real. Thanks for exploring this manual with me today, and keep doing the work.